At 65, the thought of dating someone 20 years younger, or even 20 years older, can feel like stepping into unfamiliar territory. The question itself sparks curiosity because it pushes against what many people consider normal. Friends may smile politely, strangers might whisper, and deep down, you may wonder if love with that kind of distance in age is even possible. Yet curiosity lingers, because love never truly follows rules written on calendars. Age gap dating stirs so many emotions because it challenges both tradition and expectation. Some see it as exciting, a chance to bring fresh energy into a seasoned life. Others view it with skepticism, imagining only obstacles. The truth lies somewhere in between, where stories of real people show both joy and struggle, growth and compromise. That is what makes the subject worth exploring, because behind the stereotypes are men and women trying to build something meaningful together. This isn't about judgment or defending choices. It's about honest conversation. What are the real advantages of such relationships? What challenges come with them? And what lessons can only be learned by living them? These are the questions we'll face head-on, with openness and respect, as we explore the world of age gap dating. At first glance, an age gap relationship might look like an uneven match. One person may have decades of lived experience, a library of memories, and a body that has known both strength and the inevitable slowing of time. The other may carry a fresher energy, a curiosity for what lies ahead, and a spirit not yet weighed down by too many disappointments. Outsiders often focus on the differences: the birth years, the stages of life, the contrast between wrinkles and smooth skin, between retirement plans and career goals. But what many fail to see is that those differences can become a source of incredible strength. They can create a balance that brings out the best in both people. The pros of age gap dating are real, and for men over 60, they can open doors that might otherwise remain closed. Energy meets experience. One of the first and most obvious benefits is the way energy and experience come together. Imagine a well-built house that has stood firm through storms and seasons. The foundation is strong, the structure solid, but perhaps the paint has faded. Then, with a touch of fresh color, the house comes alive again, catching the light in ways it never did before. That is what often happens when an older man begins a relationship with a younger partner. The older partner brings stability, the kind that can only be earned over years of trial and error, of successes and failures, of paying bills, raising children, navigating careers, and enduring personal storms. This stability can be reassuring to someone younger who may still be in the thick of uncertainty. At the same time, the younger partner brings energy and a willingness to try new things that might have felt unnecessary or intimidating otherwise. Take the story of David, 70, and Lisa, 50. They met over coffee, not through a dating app but through mutual friends. What began as small talk quickly blossomed into deeper conversations, and eventually, a partnership that stretched beyond romance. They decided to open a coffee shop together. David, with his decades of financial experience, handled the numbers. He knew how to balance a budget, negotiate a lease, and anticipate risks. Lisa, meanwhile, was fluent in the digital language of social media. She built an online presence for the shop that drew in younger crowds, designed a fresh aesthetic, and brought creativity to the brand. The combination was powerful. What David lacked in energy for the fast-paced marketing world, Lisa provided with enthusiasm. And what Lisa lacked in financial wisdom, David offered with calm assurance. The success of their coffee shop wasn't just about selling lattes. It was a metaphor for what happens when energy meets experience. Their relationship thrived because they didn't waste time trying to change one another. They built on strengths, not weaknesses. This is the first great lesson for men over 60, considering an age gap relationship. Stop worrying about the years between you and start asking how those years can complement each other. For the older man, this injection of energy can be life-changing. It might reignite curiosity in travel, spark the courage to learn a new skill, or even inspire healthier living. A man who once thought his adventurous days were behind him might suddenly find himself booking a trip, joining a dance class, or trying a hobby that never crossed his mind before. It doesn't mean pretending to be 20 again. It means allowing the energy of a partner to awaken parts of you that were quietly waiting for a nudge. Psychologists often speak of generativity, the idea that in later life, people find meaning by sharing wisdom, mentoring, or leaving a legacy. In an age gap relationship, that instinct finds fertile ground. The older partner's life lessons can guide the younger one, while the younger partner's drive keeps the relationship moving forward. Together, they form a cycle that blends security with spontaneity. Emotional balance. Beyond the spark of new energy, another profound benefit emerges: emotional balance. By the time a man reaches his 60s, he has likely weathered storms of many kinds. Failed business ventures, family disagreements, health scares, even the heartbreak of loss. These experiences leave scars, but they also teach patience. Many older men learn, sometimes painfully, that reacting impulsively rarely helps. They understand the value of listening, of breathing before responding, of letting silence do its work. This emotional steadiness can be a gift to a younger partner who may still be navigating the turbulence of midlife. Careers may feel uncertain, goals may shift, identity may be questioned. To have a partner who doesn't get swept up in every wave of anxiety but instead offers a steady hand is a rare treasure. Consider John, 68, whose girlfriend Emily was in her mid-40s. She was facing a major career transition. Her company was downsizing, and she wasn't sure whether to start over in a new field or fight to keep her position. Nights were restless, filled with doubt. John could have rushed to solve her problems, but instead, he listened. He reminded her gently that setbacks are chapters, not entire books. He drew on his own past, sharing stories of times he had felt lost and how those seasons eventually opened to new paths. His patience, his refusal to panic, became her anchor. In relationships where both partners are the same age, it's easy for two people to spiral together when stress hits. But in age gap relationships, the contrast in emotional responses can create balance. The younger partner may bring enthusiasm but also anxiety, while the older partner contributes a calm perspective. This doesn't mean the older partner never struggles. Of course, he does. But having decades of perspective means he often knows that storms pass. A practical takeaway here is to make calm communication the anchor of the relationship. It's not about grand speeches but about habits. Speak slowly when tensions rise. Listen fully before offering an answer. Sometimes the greatest strength is not in solving the problem but in helping your partner breathe through it. For men over 60, this ability is often second nature by now. And when applied with love, it can turn moments of crisis into deeper trust. Expanding each other's worlds. Perhaps one of the most exciting advantages of an age gap relationship is the chance to expand each other's worlds. Every generation grows up with its own music, its own movies, its own technology, its own cultural touchstones. When two people from different generations come together, they each bring a universe the other has never fully known. For the older man, this might mean discovering new music or films, learning about social trends, or even exploring technology with a guide who finds joy in teaching. For the younger partner, it can mean gaining access to history not found in textbooks. Personal stories of cultural shifts, first-hand accounts of events, lessons about resilience from someone who lived through challenges rather than just reading about them. Picture a couple in their early 70s and 50s who decide to take a Latin dance class. Neither has danced before. The first sessions are awkward, full of missteps and laughter. But soon, they're not just learning steps. They're learning patience with each other, the joy of laughing at mistakes, and the thrill of accomplishing something side by side. The dance becomes a metaphor for the relationship itself, sometimes clumsy, often surprising, but always moving forward together. Another example comes from a man named Richard, 71, who began dating a woman in her late 40s. He had spent much of his retirement tinkering with woodworking in his garage, building furniture for family and friends. She, meanwhile, was a graphic designer with an eye for aesthetics. When they began spending weekends together, she suggested they combine their talents. He would build the pieces, and she would design the finishes, colors, and promotional materials to sell them online. What started as a hobby became a small business, and more importantly, a shared adventure that neither would have pursued alone. Expanding each other's worlds isn't limited to hobbies or business. It can be as simple as trying a new restaurant, taking a weekend drive to a town you've never visited, or reading each other's favorite books. The point is not the activity itself, but the discovery. When couples make a habit of creating new experiences together, they build memories that become the glue of the relationship. This expansion also helps guard against one of the most common traps of later life: routine. Many men in their 60s or 70s find themselves in patterns. Same meals, same television shows, same social circles. While routine provides comfort, it can also dull curiosity. A younger partner often shakes this up. She may introduce podcasts, social platforms, or even fitness routines that feel foreign at first but soon become enjoyable. It's easy to dismiss these things as trivial, but they matter. They keep the mind active, the body moving, and the spirit engaged. For an older man, having a partner who insists on discovery can be the difference between merely existing and truly living. And for the younger partner, having someone who can reflect on life's bigger picture provides grounding when novelty alone is not enough. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The pattern that emerges. When you look at these 3 advantages together, energy meets experience, emotional balance, and expanding each other's worlds, a pattern emerges. Successful age gap relationships are not built on ignoring differences. They are built on using those differences to create something richer. The energy of youth doesn't cancel out the wisdom of age, it enhances it. The patience of experience doesn't smother enthusiasm, it steadies it. And the different worlds each partner brings don't divide them. They open doors that would otherwise remain locked. There is a certain magic in realizing that while your birth years may be far apart, your lives can still run in sync. When you play to your strengths, communicate with patience, and keep curiosity alive, the age gap stops being the focus. It becomes part of the story, but not the whole story. For men over 60 who wonder whether such relationships can work, the answer lies not in chasing youth but in embracing balance. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. Don't fear the differences. Instead, see them as opportunities. Each wrinkle, each scar, each laugh line is not a liability but a reminder of the life you've lived, and a foundation for the life you can still build. In the end, the pros of age gap dating are not abstract theories. They are lived realities, written in the lives of couples who have chosen to step outside of convention and into possibility. They show us that love after 60 doesn't have to shrink. It can expand, renew, and thrive in ways that surprise everyone, including the people living it. The other side of the story. Every coin has 2 sides. For all the joys and renewal an age gap relationship can bring, it would be dishonest to pretend there aren't challenges as well. To walk into such a relationship with rose-colored glasses is to set yourself up for disappointment. But to face those challenges with open eyes and an honest heart is to discover that many of them can be overcome, and sometimes even turned into strengths. The truth is, relationships are never without struggle, whether the partners are the same age or decades apart. But in age gap dating, the struggles take on a different shape. They often revolve around health and lifestyle differences, the sting of social judgment, and the sometimes delicate issue of conflicting plans for the future. For men over 60 considering this path, understanding these realities is not meant to scare you away. It is meant to equip you with the tools to build a partnership that lasts. Differences in health and lifestyle. The first and most unavoidable challenge is physical. Time moves differently for a body at 70 than it does at 40 or 50. Even the most disciplined man who eats well, exercises daily, and keeps regular checkups will notice changes in stamina, recovery, and energy levels. It is not a mark of weakness. It is the simple truth of biology. Picture Mike, 72, whose partner Rachel was 48. Rachel adored hiking, real hiking, the kind that meant starting at dawn, carrying a backpack up steep trails, and returning with sore muscles and the satisfaction of conquering nature. Mike had always loved the outdoors, but his idea of enjoyment leaned more toward gentle walks and scenic drives. The first couple of hikes were exhilarating but exhausting. By the third, Mike was pushing himself beyond what his knees and lungs wanted to give. He found himself dreading the trips, not because he didn't love her company, but because he feared falling short. Eventually, he gathered the courage to be honest. He admitted that while he wanted to share her passion, he could not keep pace every time. They worked out a compromise. They planned shorter, moderate walks together and left the more demanding hikes for her outings with friends. That way, Rachel didn't feel held back, and Mike didn't feel pressured beyond his capacity. Instead of becoming a wedge, their honesty turned into a foundation of trust. This story highlights a simple but powerful principle. Negotiate shared activities that respect both partners' energy. A relationship isn't about proving equality in every activity. It is about finding joy in what you can do together while giving space for individual pursuits. For older men, this may mean acknowledging physical limitations without shame. For younger partners, it means understanding that love does not require someone to match your stride step for step. Lifestyle differences also come into play. A man in his late 60s may already be retired, cherishing slower mornings, time in the garden, or quiet evenings with a book. A younger partner may still be climbing the career ladder, staying up late for deadlines, or buzzing with the energy of new professional opportunities. These rhythms can clash, but with awareness, they can also complement one another. The slower pace of one can balance the speed of the other. The ambition of one can inspire the steadiness of the other. The key is communication and adjustment, not denial. Social judgment and stereotypes. If physical differences are the challenge inside the home, social judgment is the challenge outside of it. Age gap couples, especially when the man is older, often find themselves the target of assumptions, whispers, and jokes. Some call it curiosity, others call it cruelty. Either way, it can sting. Bob, 69, knew this well. He had been with his girlfriend, a 40-year-old graphic designer, for nearly 2 years when the comments began. At first, they brushed it off. A casual joke about being her sugar daddy. A raised eyebrow when they entered a restaurant. Friends who asked, with a smirk, "What's she really after?" But over time, the jokes piled up. Even family members, without intending harm, hinted at doubts. Was she genuinely in love, or just looking for security? At first, the weight of these voices began to create cracks. Bob felt defensive. His girlfriend felt insulted. But instead of letting those cracks spread, they made a decision. Their relationship would not be defined by outsiders. They built a private pact, a sense of us against the world. They chose to focus on their truth rather than others' stories. They showed up for each other's lives, they created traditions together, and eventually, the comments lost their power. For couples in age gap relationships, this challenge is nearly universal. Strangers may glance twice, colleagues may gossip, and even children or grandchildren may question motives. The temptation is either to withdraw completely or to overcompensate, trying to prove the authenticity of the relationship. But the wiser path lies in balance. Yes, protect your bond with a sense of unity. But don't shut yourselves off from everyone else. Isolation can make the outside noise louder, not softer. Instead, stay connected to supportive friends, family, or communities that affirm your happiness. Over time, consistent authenticity becomes its own defense. When people see that the relationship is real, when they witness respect and joy firsthand, the stereotypes lose their sting. It's worth remembering, too, that judgment is often born out of misunderstanding or envy. Many people simply cannot imagine such a relationship working, because they've never seen it done well. By living your truth openly, you may quietly become the example that reshapes someone else's assumptions. Conflicting future plans. Perhaps the most delicate challenge is when visions for the future don't line up. This is not unique to age gap couples. Many relationships stumble over differences in goals. But the age difference often magnifies the stakes. George, 67, had grown children and grandchildren. His idea of the coming years was retirement, travel, and slowing down. His partner, at 42, was in the middle of her career and still dreaming about becoming a mother. For her, the future held energy and ambition. For him, it held rest and reflection. Their love was real, but the fork in the road was undeniable. They could have avoided the conversation, enjoying the present while ignoring the looming question. But they chose a harder, braver path. They sat down, face to face, and spoke honestly. George admitted he did not want to start over with sleepless nights and diapers. She admitted her longing to be a mother had not gone away. It was painful, but it was necessary. Ultimately, they reached an understanding that worked for them, but both knew that without that conversation, resentment could have festered. This example underscores one of the most important lessons of age gap dating. Have your non-negotiable conversations early. Within the first year, talk about the things that matter most. Children, career goals, financial expectations, retirement plans, and where you want to live. These talks may feel uncomfortable, but they prevent heartache later. It is better to discover differences at the start than to find yourself years deep, only to realize you are heading in opposite directions. Another layer of conflicting future plans comes with caregiving. A man in his 70s may be healthy today, but what about 10 or 20 years down the road? Is the younger partner prepared for the possibility of playing a caregiving role sooner than expected? These questions are not romantic, but they are real. Facing them doesn't diminish love, it honors it. By planning for the difficult seasons, couples show that they value each other enough to prepare, not just hope. The thread that holds it together. When we weave these three challenges together, health and lifestyle differences, social judgment, and conflicting future plans, we see a common thread. All of them call for the same skill: honest, ongoing communication. None of these issues is our automatic deal breaker, but ignoring them can be. Health differences don't have to divide couples if they are acknowledged with humility and creativity. Social judgment doesn't have to poison love if the couple builds unity and surrounds themselves with supportive people. Conflicting plans don't have to break bonds if they are addressed early, directly, and respectfully. For men over 60, the lesson is simple but profound. Don't enter an age gap relationship with denial or defensiveness. Enter with clarity. Know your limits. Speak your truth. Invite your partner to do the same. It is in that honesty that true partnership is forged. And here's the paradox. When handled with care, even the challenges can bring couples closer. The act of navigating health realities together creates intimacy. The strength of standing against judgment together builds loyalty. The courage of planning for the future deepens trust. Far from being signs of weakness, these struggles become the very material from which resilient love is built. A wider perspective. It is easy for outsiders to view age gap relationships only through the lens of novelty or scandal. They may joke, criticize, or dismiss. But those who live it know the deeper truth. These relationships are as complex, as fragile, and as beautiful as any other. They carry their own unique hurdles, yes, but they also offer unique rewards. For men over 60, the question is not whether these challenges exist. It is how you will meet them. Will you deny them until they overwhelm you? Or will you face them with courage, honesty, and a willingness to adapt? The choice determines whether the age gap becomes a stumbling block or simply another part of your shared story. Love after 60 is not about pretending to be young again. It is about embracing exactly where you are, while opening your life to someone whose rhythm may be different from yours. When done with openness, respect, and planning, the cons of age gap dating don't define the relationship. They refine it. Real-life inspirational stories. It is one thing to talk about theories, principles, and possibilities. It is another to hear the stories of people who have lived them. Theories may persuade the mind, but stories persuade the heart. When it comes to age gap relationships, inspirational stories from real couples show us what endurance, humor, and shared purpose can accomplish. They remind us that while love is never free of obstacles, it is always capable of surprising us when two people commit to facing life together. Florida couple. Love on the waves. Down in sunny Florida, where the water glitters under endless skies, a man in his late 60s found love in a place he least expected. Richard, a retired Navy veteran who had spent decades at sea, thought his life had already run its course in terms of romance. He filled his days with sailing, tending to his modest boat, and trading sea stories at the local yacht club. Then came Anna, in her mid-40s, a schoolteacher who had grown up in a small inland town and had never once set foot on a sailboat. She was adventurous, curious, and eager to try something new after a divorce had left her feeling cautious about love. Their paths crossed one afternoon at the yacht club when she signed up for beginner sailing lessons. At first, the differences between them were obvious. Richard had the weathered face of a man who had lived under the sun and wind. His hair silver, his body slower than in his prime. Anna radiated youthful energy, with a spark in her eyes that lit up the room. Some of the club members whispered about their pairing. What could they possibly have in common? But on the water, the questions dissolved. Richard taught her the basics of sailing: how to read the wind, how to adjust the sails, and how to keep calm when the waves tossed the boat. Anna, in return, brought laughter to every lesson. She stumbled, tripped, and fell into the water more than once, but each time she surfaced with a grin, unafraid of looking silly. For Richard, her willingness to laugh at herself was a revelation. For Anna, his patience was an anchor in waters that sometimes felt too wide. As weeks turned into months, their sailing trips became more than lessons. They became weekends away, sailing to nearby coastal towns, exploring restaurants by the docks, and sharing sunsets that colored the horizon with gold and purple. Soon, the romance became undeniable. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Their friends questioned the relationship. Some teased Richard, calling him a lucky old sailor. Others wondered if Anna was seeking financial security, even though Richard's life was modest. But the truth was simpler. They loved the way they balanced each other. Richard provided wisdom, teaching Anna not only sailing but also the art of patience, resilience, and courage. Anna brought vitality, introducing Richard to new fitness routines on shore, from yoga classes to weekend bike rides. Their agreement was simple. They would treat the age gap not as a hurdle but as an adventure. He would keep teaching her the ways of the sea. She would keep him young with her drive to stay active. Every cruise, every harbor stop, every shared laugh reinforced the bond. Over time, the whispers faded, and their love spoke louder than any stereotype. The lesson from Richard and Anna is clear. Age gap relationships thrive when both partners see the gap not as distance but as territory to explore together. California power couple. On the other side of the country, under California's golden sun, another couple built a different kind of love story. Michael, a 75-year-old retired architect, had lived a life of structure and precision. For decades, he designed buildings that touched skylines and reshaped communities. By the time he reached retirement, he was ready for a quieter life, gardening, reading, and volunteering at his church. Then came Sophia, 53, an entrepreneur and community organizer whose calendar was always full. She was respected in local business circles, always buzzing with ideas, and deeply committed to philanthropy. They had known each other for years as friends. Their paths often crossed at community events, fundraisers, and charity galas. For a long time, the relationship was professional, even platonic. But friendship has a way of softening the ground for something deeper. It was only after Sophia lost her mother and Michael showed up to support her through her grief that the friendship shifted. She saw in him a steady kindness that went beyond gestures. He saw in her a strength that reminded him of why people build in the first place. Not for buildings, but for lives. Soon, they were inseparable. Yet their relationship looked nothing like the Florida couple's carefree sailing romance. Where Richard and Anna found adventure in the waves, Michael and Sophia found theirs in purpose. They poured their time and resources into causes bigger than themselves. Together, they organized charity events, raised funds for community shelters, and became well known for their teamwork. Michael's experience in planning and logistics meant that events ran smoothly. Sophia's energy and network brought people together. He was the anchor, she was the sail. Instead of clashing over their different stages of life, they found common ground in service. Their love wasn't built on escaping the world but on reshaping it. Friends joked about their differences. Sophia teased Michael about his love for paper calendars, while she relied on her smartphone and apps. He joked back that someone had to keep them connected to the analog world. These small differences became a source of humor, not division. What made their bond powerful was not just romance but purpose. They reminded everyone around them that love is not only about private joy but also about what two people can create together for others. Their age gap became irrelevant, overshadowed by the legacy they were building. Key lessons from real couples. When we look at couples like Richard and Anna in Florida or Michael and Sophia in California, a few truths stand out. These truths are not unique to them. They can be applied to any couple brave enough to walk the road of age gap love. First, embrace strengths instead of trying to erase differences. Richard did not try to pretend he was 20 years younger on the sailboat, and Anna did not demand that he become something he was not. Michael did not force Sophia to slow down, nor did she pressure him to speed up. Instead, they leaned into what each did best. He brought patience, she brought energy. He brought wisdom, she brought drive. Love thrives when strengths are celebrated rather than when differences are denied. Second, find shared goals that give your relationship a foundation beyond romance. For Richard and Anna, it was sailing and fitness. For Michael and Sophia, it was philanthropy and community service. These shared missions gave them a reason to wake up together and a sense of direction beyond simply enjoying each other's company. Romance may spark a fire, but shared purpose keeps the fire burning through seasons. Third, keep a sense of humor. All couples face irritations. Different habits, different preferences, different rhythms. Age gap couples face an added layer of generational quirks. She may laugh at his love for vinyl records. He may chuckle at her obsession with social media. Instead of letting those quirks become points of tension, the happiest couples turn them into private jokes. Humor has a way of softening edges and reminding both partners not to take themselves too seriously. Fourth, stand united against outside noise without isolating yourselves. Both couples faced skepticism. Both chose unity instead of division. They built a shield around their relationship but also stayed engaged with friends and the community. They did not allow isolation to amplify doubts. Instead, they lived openly, allowing their joy and authenticity to silence critics over time. Fifth, recognize that love is seasonal, and every season has its beauty. Richard knew he could not match Anna's energy forever, and she accepted it. Michael knew his years outnumbered Sophia's, and she did not run from it. Instead, they both acknowledged the reality of time while choosing to make the most of the present. This acceptance gave their love depth rather than fear. Why these stories matter. For men over 60 who wonder if love is still possible, if connection can still bloom despite an age gap, stories like these matter. They remind us that love after 60 is not just a fantasy or a rare exception. It is happening, quietly and powerfully, in communities across the country. The Florida couple shows that joy can be found in adventure, in shared experiences that bring laughter and lightness. The California couple shows that joy can also be found in purpose, in working together toward goals that stretch beyond personal satisfaction. Both remind us that age gap love does not have to fit a single mold. It can be playful, it can be purposeful, and at its best, it can be both. These stories also show that relationships are not defined by what outsiders think. Whispers, stereotypes, and doubts may come, but authenticity always speaks louder. When two people treat each other with respect, build on each other's strengths, and keep laughter alive, the calendar becomes a footnote, not the headline. Closing reflection. When we pull back and reflect on these stories, a larger picture comes into view. Age gap relationships are not about denying time or clinging desperately to youth. They are about writing a new chapter with the years you have left. Whether that chapter is filled with sailing adventures, philanthropic projects, or simply quiet evenings of companionship. For men over 60, the message is not to chase a stereotype but to seek authenticity. Love, after all, is not measured in years but in the quality of days shared. If those days are filled with respect, humor, and shared purpose, then the relationship stands a chance of not only surviving but thriving. The Florida couple and the California couple remind us that while every love story is unique, the principles remain the same. Embrace differences, build on strengths, set shared goals, laugh often, and stand together. These lessons are timeless. They are as true for a couple with a 20-year age gap as they are for a couple the same age. And perhaps the most powerful lesson of all is this: it is never too late. At 60, 70, or beyond, love can still surprise you. It can still arrive unannounced, asking you to set sail or to set a new purpose. And if you are willing to welcome it with honesty and courage, you may discover that the best chapters are not behind you but still ahead. Practical advice for older men considering age gap relationships. By now, we've walked through the joys and the challenges of age gap dating. We've seen how energy can meet experience, how emotional steadiness can balance youthful intensity, and how differences can open new worlds. We've also acknowledged the reality of health disparities, the sting of judgment, and the complications of conflicting future plans. But for men over 60 who may be thinking seriously about stepping into such a relationship, ideas alone are not enough. What matters most is practical guidance, principles that can be lived day to day, choices that can shape whether love becomes a passing spark or a steady flame. These principles aren't rigid rules carved in stone. They are insights drawn from the real experiences of men who have walked this path and found ways to build something lasting. Be honest about needs and limitations. One of the most common mistakes older men make when entering a relationship with a younger partner is the temptation to exaggerate strength or to hide limitations. The desire to impress can be powerful. You may find yourself pushing through late nights, pretending to enjoy concerts that run past midnight, or signing up for physically demanding trips that leave your knees aching. At first, these efforts may seem harmless, a way to show commitment. But over time, pretending erodes trust. No relationship can flourish on a foundation of performance. What your partner truly values is not a staged version of you but the reality of who you are. Consider Robert, 66, who began dating Claire, 47. When they first met, Claire loved salsa dancing. She invited him to join, and though he had no background in dance, he said yes. The first nights were exhilarating, but also exhausting. His hips stiffened, his stamina lagged, and after several lessons, he began to dread the evenings. Instead of admitting this, he forced a smile, pretending everything was fine. Eventually, his frustration boiled over, and Claire felt deceived. She hadn't needed him to be a dancer. She only wanted him to be honest. After a long talk, they found a compromise. She continued her salsa nights with friends while they explored ballroom dancing together. A slower pace that suited his body but still gave them shared joy. Their bond grew stronger because Robert finally spoke his truth. The lesson is simple. Honesty is not a weakness. It is an invitation for trust. If you need slower evenings, say so. If you dislike certain activities, admit it. A younger partner does not expect you to erase your years. What she wants most is a partner whose word can be trusted. Pretending only builds resentment. Honesty builds respect. Listen and respect the differences. Generational differences are not just about physical energy. They are about perspectives, habits, and worldviews shaped by different eras. You may remember where you were when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. She may recall the launch of the first iPhone. You may prefer paper newspapers with your morning coffee. She may scroll through online articles before her first sip. These differences can become sources of irritation if approached with judgment. But they can also become opportunities for growth if approached with curiosity. Listening is the bridge between those two outcomes. Take Harold, 70, who began dating Monica, 50. She often shared her frustrations about navigating social media at work, about online criticism, about the pressures of a digital-first world. At first, Harold dismissed it. "Why let strangers bother you?" he said. But his dismissal only deepened her frustration. It wasn't until he stopped to listen, really listen, that their communication improved. He didn't need to fix her problem. He needed to understand her world. In return, Monica listened when Harold spoke about his discomfort with rapid cultural changes, the fading of certain traditions, and his longing for simpler times. She didn't roll her eyes or call him outdated. She respected his perspective. Through mutual respect, their bond deepened. The key is to treat differences as teachers. Let them show you what you don't know. Resist the urge to assume your way is superior simply because it has stood the test of time. Likewise, resist the temptation to dismiss younger ways as frivolous. Respect grows when you validate your partner's experience, even when it differs from your own. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Prioritize health, physical and emotional. For men over 60, health is not just a personal matter, it is a relational one. Your energy, your physical abilities, even your emotional stability, all directly affect the quality of your relationship. A younger partner may encourage you to join in active pursuits, but to do so wisely requires honest attention to your health. This begins with physical care, regular checkups, balanced exercise, and a diet that sustains energy. It is tempting to coast, especially after retirement, but neglecting health creates a silent burden on the relationship. On the other hand, committing to wellness not only extends your vitality but also demonstrates to your partner that you value the life you share. Consider Frank, 71, who dated Melissa, 46. Melissa loved hiking, cycling, and yoga. Frank had never been particularly active. Early on, he realized that if he wanted to keep up, not at her pace, but at his own sustainable pace, he needed to make changes. He began walking daily, joined a light strength training class for seniors, and improved his diet. Within a year, his stamina improved dramatically. He still wasn't cycling 50 miles like Melissa, but he could join her for shorter rides and hikes. More importantly, he showed her that he cared enough about their future to invest in his health. Emotional health matters just as much. Men of older generations were often taught to hide feelings, to solve problems silently, to shoulder burdens alone. But silence can be mistaken for distance. A younger partner may long for open communication, emotional presence, and vulnerability. By tending to your emotional health, through honest conversation, counseling if needed, or simply learning to articulate feelings, you create an intimacy that transcends age. In short, prioritize health not just for yourself, but for the life you want to share. It is a gift to your partner and to yourself. Keep the romance alive. Romance does not have an expiration date. Yet in later years, it is easy to assume that affection no longer needs to be shown. You may think, "She knows how I feel," or "I don't need to prove anything anymore." But relationships thrive on reminders, not assumptions. Romance after 60 does not require grand gestures. It lives in the small details: a handwritten note tucked into her purse, a surprise cup of coffee made just the way she likes it, a planned day trip to a place you've never visited. These acts say, "I still choose you," and they matter more than you may realize. Edward, 69, had been with his partner, Carla, for 5 years. Their relationship was stable, but Carla sometimes expressed that she missed the spark of their early days. Edward realized he had slipped into a routine. So he began writing her short notes again, just as he had when they first dated. Sometimes playful, sometimes romantic, sometimes simply grateful. He arranged simple outings, a drive along the coast, an afternoon picnic in the park. None of these acts was expensive or elaborate, but they rekindled the sense of being cherished. Humor, too, is part of romance. The ability to laugh together, even at yourselves, builds intimacy. When you forget the grocery list or stumble during a dance step, laughter turns frustration into bonding. Keeping romance alive means never allowing love to grow stale. It means remembering that affection is not about age, but about attention. Have the hard conversations early. Perhaps the most essential advice for men over 60 is this: do not avoid the uncomfortable conversations. In age gap relationships, unspoken assumptions can become landmines. Questions about children, retirement, finances, caregiving, and lifestyle must be faced early. It may feel awkward to talk about these issues in the first year, but avoidance only postpones pain. Honesty, even when it risks disappointment, builds respect. Paul, 68, faced this with his partner, Elena, 44. Within months of dating, Elena shared her desire to have children. Paul, already a grandfather, felt certain that the chapter was closed. It was a difficult discussion, one that could have ended their relationship. But instead of hiding his feelings, he chose honesty. They eventually decided to remain together without pursuing parenthood, but both acknowledged that if they had ignored the subject, resentment might have poisoned the bond. The same principle applies to retirement goals, where to live, or how to handle future health challenges. For example, if you expect to retire to a quiet rural town but your partner dreams of a bustling city, those visions must be reconciled early. If you fear becoming a burden in later years, discuss how caregiving might be approached. Having hard conversations does not weaken love. It strengthens it. It signals that you take the relationship seriously enough to plan for its future, not just enjoy its present. Drawing the threads together. When we weave these 5 principles together, a clear picture emerges. Successful age gap relationships are not sustained by charm, denial, or performance. They are sustained by honesty, respect, health, romance, and courageous conversations. Be honest about your limitations, and you build trust. Listen with respect, and you turn differences into bridges. Prioritize health, and you gift your partner years of vitality and presence. Keep romance alive, and you remind her daily that love still burns brightly. Face the hard conversations early, and you lay a foundation strong enough to weather storms. For men over 60, this advice is not about chasing youth. It is about embracing maturity with courage and using it to create a love that feels both fresh and enduring. It is about realizing that the years behind you do not disqualify you from love, but prepare you for it. Final reflection. Love after 60 is not a performance. It is not about proving that you can keep up with every pace or mimic every trend. It is about showing up authentically, with scars and wisdom intact, and inviting someone to walk with you through the years ahead. Practical advice may sound simple, but in practice, it asks for courage. The courage to be real, to listen, to take care of yourself, to keep showing affection, and to talk about the things that matter most. These acts may not make headlines, but they build legacies. And when you look back years from now, you may realize that love in later life, built on these principles, was not a second chance or a consolation prize. It was, in fact, the truest expression of all the years you've lived, distilled into the kind of partnership that not only survives the gap but thrives because of it. In the end, what we've uncovered is simple yet powerful. Love has never been about the number of candles on a birthday cake, but about the quality of the days we share. An age gap may be the first thing people notice, but it should never be the thing that defines your story. What truly matters is the respect you give each other, the trust you build, and the way you choose to walk side by side through life seasons. Partnership is the heart of it all. Not performance, not pretending, not trying to keep up with anyone else's pace. When love is rooted in partnership, it becomes less about proving something and more about building something. Whether it's shared laughter on a clumsy dance floor, quiet evenings at home, or tackling challenges hand in hand, these are the moments that turn relationships into legacies. And each season of life has its own beauty. Youth brings energy, middle years bring ambition, and later years bring wisdom and perspective. Embracing these seasons instead of resisting them allows love to feel fuller, richer, and more enduring. When you stop chasing what's gone and start cherishing what's here, the age gap fades into the background. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced an age gap relationship or known someone who has? What was the most rewarding part, and what was the hardest? Share your story in the comments. It may encourage someone else today. And if this conversation has given you something to think about, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others. Because love after 60 isn't about numbers, it's about hearts finding their rhythm, and that is a truth worth spreading.